Nikki G, and welcome to Better Commander. Who wants to talk about an elf that flew too close to the sun? Well, guess who's back, baby? Ezuri. Look at the fit, the fashion, the drip. This guy's been around for a while. He was once the leader of the resistance, the Phyrexian completion, but then guess what, dude? He got completed. And we're going to delve into that along with the exploration of budget deck lists for the new card. But first, take a moment to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Any comment will do. You want to talk about Bill Clinton's DNA on the Chinese spy balloon? Listen, I'm here for it. Is that why the authorities don't want me recovering the pieces? Bohemian Grove, it's a human war. Also, if you want to support the channel directly, you can keep me energized by buying me a coffee at the link in the description. I'm pretty much 50% caffeine at this point. Ezuri was first represented on the card Ezuri Renegade Leader. 1 green for a legendary creature, elf warrior. It's a 2/2. Has green, regenerate another target elf. Super useful ability. 2 green, elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. This guy has a definite look to him. He's a formidable elf ball commander. I have an Ezuri deck, and this guy has a win condition on his little spindly elven legs. Use all that elf ball mana, activate him 3 or 4 times, and it's lights out for your opponents. During this time that he's depicted, Ezuri was a reformed bandit, leading the resistance to Phyrexian invasion. Well, Elspeth and Koth and Venser, they were all hanging out with Ezuri trying to find Karn, who went out for milk and cigarettes and never came back, just like my dad. Back then, Ezuri just did cardio, dude. He was in pretty good shape. He looked good, but he didn't really have the muscles. Everybody made fun of his puny arms. So they were all chilling, they were chatting with Malira, they were making plans to go out and see the new Star Wars movie when they were attacked by Tezzeret and some Phyrexians. Well, the really cool planeswalkers ditched Ezuri. They just left him there. So Ezuri got captured and then he was completed by Jin-Gitaxias and the Progress Engine, which was Jin-Gitaxias' prog rock band back then. This leads us to Ezuri's second incarnation, Claw of Progress. 2 green and a blue for a 3/3 legendary creature, Phyrexian elf warrior. Whenever a creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you get an experience counter. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, where X is the number of experience counters you have. A while back between sets, I did an Ezuri Claw of Progress Infect deck, and you can check that out as well. Anyways, when they were completing this guy, they used some Anabol, they used some Elven Growth Hormone, they did the same procedure they do on Russian Olympic athletes. So I guess he is now a Phyrexian agent. This guy got buff and huge. Fast forward to 2023 and the main man is back. So fresh out of Phyrexia, all will be one. We got Ezuri Stalker of Spheres. 2 green and a blue for a legendary creature, Phyrexian elf warrior. It's a 3/3. When Ezuri Stalker of Spheres enters the battlefield, you may pay 3. If you do, proliferate twice. Whenever you proliferate, draw a card. Fantastic value right there. And he says, my old friends, have you decided at last to stop clinging to the past and join me in the grand pursuit of perfection? So yeah, man, check this out. Malira ended up calling this guy out on Phyrexian state media for using PEDs, and Ezuri got off the juice. He reformed himself. Now he's got a bit of a froggy face as a result, but he still rocks. Proliferate is an awesome mechanic. What can you proliferate? You can proliferate poison counters, +1 counters, loyalty counters, anything really, level counters. This value engine is awesome. He can proliferate on the way in and draw 2 cards if you want to pay a little extra mana, or get him out and benefit from the 15 proliferate cards in my deck. So I decided to go with the +1/+1 counters theme because it's fun to watch innocuous creatures get really big. I think poison counters are great, but they're kind of a trap in this deck. Although there are a few cards that can deal them out, it's kind of a tertiary win condition here. So we want to ramp as always, and if we do it with artifacts that have counters, we can benefit from the proliferation of those counters. We have Astral Cornucopia, Everflowing Chalice. These are awesome in a deck like this. I used to run a Varel of the Whole Clay deck, and these things were awesome there as well. Gyre Sage, this is one of my favorite cards. Gyre Sage is 1 and a green for a creature elf druid. It's a 1/2 with Evolve. So Evolve is whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Has tap, add green for each +1/+1 counter on it. This thing can get really big. It can help to add a huge amount of mana. I don't know how to say this, dude. I think I'm going to get canceled if I say it the way I want to, but I'll say Biophagus. 1 and a green for a creature, a human Tyranid wizard. It's a 1/3. It's got genomic enhancement. Of course it does. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. If this mana is spent to cast a creature spell, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. This guy is in Nefarious doings. I love this thing. And apparently I'm not alone because he's $7 right now. Getting counters on the creatures is vital in this deck. Glistening Sphere sounds like something that Prince Harry eats for breakfast. Would you like a little bit of Glistening Sphere, Megan? 3 generic mana for an artifact. Enters the battlefield tapped. When Glistening Sphere enters the battlefield, proliferate. There you go right there, buddy. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. It's got a corrupted mechanic. Add 3 mana of any one color if somebody has 3 or more poison counters. I love the art on this thing. Reminds me of Returnal for the PS5. Great game. For some reason, everybody loves Glistening Spheres. This is in sci-fi everywhere. I wonder if that's a primal symbol from our past or something. I should ask Alex Jones. Fathom Mage. I don't think this is a fantastic card, but it's great in a deck like this. It's one of my all-time favorite cards, and one of the first cards I pulled out of a pack when I got back into Magic after a hiatus. This thing can get huge, and it draws cards. You can't beat that. That's what we want to do. She's out there doing her dance. She's dancing like no one's watching. Do you think that's what this guy's doing, the Tyrannid Prime? You think he's dancing out there? Or is he ripping somebody apart with his claws? He's 1 green and a blue for a creature Tyrannid. It's a 0/4, has Evolve. It's a Synapse creature. Can't you tell by looking at it? Other creatures you control have Evolve. This is fantastic in this deck. In any deck you want to add counters. The 40k decks had some real bangers, man, and some solid role players like this one. Very cheap card too. You want to know what else you can proliferate? You can proliferate level counters, buddy. You got this Lighthouse Chronologist, 1 in blue for a creature. It's a human wizard. It's a 1/3. It's got level up for 1 blue mana. Levels 4 to 6, he's a 2/4, and levels 7+, he's a 3/5. At the beginning of each end step, if it's not your turn, take an extra turn after this one. So basically, if you can get this guy's level up, which is the whole point, in a 4-player game, you're getting real value out of this thing. This is a must-remove threat. People are going to take this out, or you'll be accumulating resources 4 times as fast as your opponents. This is a pricey card. It's not absolutely necessary in this deck. If you get rid of this and Birds of Paradise, you're already under $100. So listen, man, your creatures are getting huge, but what if they just have a 1/1 over on the other side of the field? Got to get them trample. I got this Crown Ceratok dude. He's 3 and a green for a creature Rhino. It's a 4/3 with tramp stamps. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. Trample's super important to get on your creatures when you're swinging in with 9/9s. And that's why you got to pull out the old Dusk Shell Crawler. 1 and a green for a creature insect. It's an 0/3. When this thing enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. This is a cool little role player in a deck where you want lots of +1/+1 counters. It's kind of a weird concept art too, just a giant beetle on a light post that somehow grants trample. Not like this guy. I know how this guy's granting you trample. This is the Hornbash Mentor. It's a human warrior. This guy enters the battlefield, put a trample counter on target non-human creature you control. Has 2 and a green, tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with trample. This is everything we want to do here. The Ikoria Mentors, I mean, listen, man, there are a bunch of furry cosplayers out there in the woods, or cosplayers or whatever, who get into some weird stuff. And speaking of weird stuff, we got the old Kodama of the West Tree. 2 and a green for a legendary creature spirit. It's a 3/3 with reach. Modified creatures you control have trample. So whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. This guy got a little pricey. It's about $6, but it's worth it in this deck. The counters make a modified, buddy. That's all we need. There are about 15 cards that get counters onto other creatures so they can get proliferated. Defiler of Vigor is one of those. 3 green for a creature, Phyrexian Worm. It's a 6/6 with trample. As an additional cost to cast green permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost green less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only amount of green mana that you pay. Whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This is such a house. Trading mana for life and getting counters on our dudes. Fantastic. And you got Renata, she's out there calling her buddies for the hunt. You got Master Biomancer. These get counters on our friends when they ETB. Master Biomancer can get pretty big himself, so it's a good idea to get counters onto him and proliferate. So as for proliferators, we have about 15 in the deck, as we said before. Bloated Contaminator's a new one. 2 and a green for a Phyrexian Beast. It's a 4/4 with trample and toxic 1. Whenever this guy deals combat damage to a player, proliferate. This is such a push card. It's pre-selling for only about $3. I don't know. I think this is a banger. It has native trample, can proliferate on damage. I just wish I knew what the heck it was. Alright, you're not going too far without Flux Channeler and Evolution Sage. These are shoo-ins. A third of the deck is creatures, a third is non-creatures, so this will trigger Flux Channeler often enough. And lastly, but not leastly, What would a Simic counters deck be without Simic Ascendancy? Green and a blue for an enchantment. 1 green and a blue, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. That's great by itself. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. Growth counters you can also proliferate. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game, buddy. These counters build up quick. If you have a couple creatures getting +1 counters, great, but you can also proliferate the growth counters on this for the do ultimate victory. Anyways, listen, this is a really fun deck that can be built on a decent budget. There's a lot of cards that go in here. There's a ton of +1/+1 synergies out there, creatures that come in with +1/+1 counters. You can build it infect. Interesting commander that's brand new for this set. Mine came in at about $115, but you can cut some non-essential stuff to get it right down. This is so synergistic, I think you can build it on a more strict budget as well. I'm going to put the deck list in the description, don't worry. Hopefully you'll find some cards in there that are useful to you. No, listen, I don't read every single card that's in the deck. That's boring. What am I going to make an hour video just reading cards all the time? You're here for the quips and you're here for the fun times. And I'm glad that you're here. Check it out on Moxfield, buddy. Thanks for watching, everybody. You're great supporters. This is Nicky G from Better Commanders signing off.